Please try and have it ready when the lesson is over. One other announcement. Pardon. Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. One other announcement. We are working on the list of things. Remember when we had our meeting, we had a lot of things that we were going to work on this year to try to get the building and other things up to date or changed. We have been working on the burglar alarm system, the security alarm system, and we got one of them fixed out in the annex, which it just needed some batteries, and she checked all the sensors in the windows. So that one is working. Tuesday we have a appointment. The electrician is going to come out Tuesday and see what it would cost to convert all the lights to LED. So he's coming out Tuesday, and also the other ADT technician is supposed to come out Tuesday to fix the security box out there. So we are working on those things, even though we may not mention it a lot. We are working on those things, and we'll probably push our outreach. It was supposed to happen the last Saturday this month. We're going to push it back a week. Since we have a lot going on, we'll just push it back for 1 week. The outreach that we're going to have up at the grocery store. I want to read something to you. I thought it was, I was kind of debating whether or not to read it, but I think I am, because it does relate to what I'm going to be talking about over the next few weeks. It's very relevant. I convinced myself that it was relevant. Put it that way. And some of you, if you read a lot, you probably ran across it some years ago. It's a prayer that a guy that was a preacher at the Christian church in Wichita, Kansas. He was invited. One of his friends was a politician. And this friend of his that was a politician invited him to say the invocation at the opening session of the legislature. You know, they have a preacher come in, and like they do at graduations, you know, they have a preacher come in and say a prayer. So this friend of his said, well, hey, why don't you come and we need somebody to say the prayer at the start of the legislative season. So why don't you come and say a prayer? He said, well, okay. You know, didn't think too much about it at first. He said he wrote down some notes like he probably would do. But then he got to thinking about it. He said, you know, I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity to say some things that I really think need to be said. And this guy wrote a prayer that was heard around the world. Because after he prayed this prayer, all kinds of requests came in for it around the world, not just in the U.S. Paul Harvey read it on his program. Several other TV outlets picked it up, a prayer. And so it was just, you know, and I ran across it several years ago, and I kept it. I said, you know, I'm just going to keep this, and I might have a use for it. And lo and behold, today, I'm going to read this prayer to you. When he got through reading this, saying this prayer, a lot of the legislators walked out. They walked out while this guy was praying. So here's the prayer. Heavenly Father, we come before you today to ask your forgiveness and to seek your direction and guidance. We know your word says, woe to those who call evil good. But that is exactly what we have done. We have lost our spiritual equilibrium and reversed our values. We confess we have ridiculed the absolute truth of the Word of God and called it pluralism. We have worshiped other gods and called it multiculturalism. We have endorsed perversion and called it an alternate lifestyle. We have exploited the poor and called it the lottery. We have rewarded people for things they have not earned. We have made many rich who are supposed to be looking out for our values. We have killed our unborn and called it choice. We have shot abortionists and called it justifiable. We have neglected to discipline our children and called it building self-esteem. We have abused power and called it politics. We have coveted our neighbor's possessions and called it ambition. We have polluted the air with profanity and pornography and called it freedom of speech. We have ridiculed the time-honored values of our forefathers and called it enlightenment. Search us, O God, and know our hearts today. Cleanse us from every sin and set us free, he added. Guide and bless these men and women who have been sent to direct us to the center of your will. I ask it in the name of your Son, the living Savior, Jesus Christ. This was back in January of 1996. That's when he did the prayer. And there was so much backlash from the legislature for him saying a prayer like that at the invocation. Now, I wanted to read it because it really touched on a lot of things that we're going to study over the next few weeks. I kind of struggle with this lesson. I didn't really, I don't really struggle with lessons too much. Those of us who teach, we get our ideas to teach from conversations, things we read. But it just dawned on me that all this politics, all the things that are being promoted around us, and I think about our children and how they're being exposed to all these things, and I think about all these children that hadn't obeyed the gospel, and when they see the world like it is, and I believe when they see all this indecision and all this profanity and all this vitriol, that the highest people, these are people who's supposed to be running the country and passing the laws, and you're supposed to look up to these people. And when they call in somebody bastards, I couldn't believe my ears. I know politics is a blood sport. I understand how they can, that's just the way it is. But when you start name calling people and calling people Pocahontas and all these names, and it's just, it's no wonder these children have no faith in the government and they're marching up and down the street. It's no wonder, because they see all this craziness going on and there's nothing to really have any faith in. And some of these people, I guarantee you, some of these people going to somebody's church on Sunday morning. Some of these senators and representatives, they do crazy things, say things, and then they show up at church on Sunday morning like this. It's crazy. So I said, in my spirit, I just could not get past, look, you got to, especially when I called this preacher friend of mine, and the first thing he said was, man, did you hear? I knew then that was confirmation. I need to talk about this, because it was just really disappointing to me that this was the case. So that's how this lesson came about. That's how it came about. And so I spent considerable time trying to, how are you going to present this? So what I thought today, what I do is I'm going to give you the outline, what I'm going to follow. And then I'm going to, so you'll know exactly what I'm going to be talking about and where I'm going with this. I thought that would be the best thing to do this morning. Now, okay, now this morning, we're going to talk about, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to define politics. You know, what is politics? It's a word that we all have heard. What is it? What is politics? We're going to really get a good definition of what politics is. And I've already covered the point of why this series. I kind of told you already how it came about. Now, we're gonna give you a really good working definition of politics because it's found everywhere. It's on your job. You got politics on your job, right, Desi? Politics on your job. Desi probably has not got the position she really is qualified for. And I bet you, I ain't even talked to Desi about this, but I know how corporations work because I used to work for them and I've owned businesses. I know how it works. I bet Desi could tell you right now, probably name 2 or 3 people that are in positions they're not qualified for, but they got there because of politics. And I hadn't even mentioned this to Desi. Can you, Desi? I didn't even know it. I knew that, but I didn't know it. Because that's the way it works. My sister, Diane, they told her, Diane used to train everybody that came through. I think I told you the story. Diane worked in the computer data entry, and she trained every person that came in there. Every person trained, they would get jobs way higher than Diane, making twice, and they would graduate from Diane and go somewhere. And so Diane finally went in the office and said, well, hey, I want to apply for this. Now, this is what state government. I want to apply for this job. Oh, I'm sorry, Diane, you don't have a degree. You don't have a degree. What did she do? Took 7 years and went and got a degree. 7 years. Going back and forth. She was living in Ringgold then, coming to LSU. Kids, whatever. Got the degree. Walked back in the office. Guess what they said? Well, you don't have enough experience. What? I've been training everybody to come through here. Finally, she got mad and quit, started working for me. She quit that job and started working for me. You know, why? Politics. Politics. There's politics on job. There's politics in families. Families. There's politics in families. Now, we don't, but we know it's true. There's politics, how certain kids are treated. Certain kids may be treated a little different. You try not to do it, but you do it anyway, and the kids see it. Well, why so-and-so? Why they don't never get on so-and-so? Why so-and-so get all the breaks? Why so-and-so, da-da-da? There's politics in families. There's politics in the church. Well, you better clear every brother so-and-so. You better clear that. You know how he is. You better clear it. There's politics, jobs, families, schools. There's politics in the schools. Where these kids go to school? Well, so-and-so got that job being principal because they married to so-and-so's brother-in-law that live over there. That's why he got it. That's politics. It's everywhere, everywhere. So we need to understand from a biblical perspective how politics should work for the Christian. Should we be involved in that type of stuff? So anyway, that's kind of, a little blurb on that. Now, we're going to talk about what the role of government, because God ordained government. Government is not something that man came up with. Government is something that God created. Government is a God-ordained thing. So we don't have to march up and down the street against the government, because government is God-ordained. No question about it. And we're going to talk about that biblically. Ironically, we're supposed to be a nation under God, right? In God we trust. Now, many people don't realize this, but now, God is mentioned in the Declaration of Independence, but God is not mentioned in the Constitution. You think about it, wait. You mean God is not mentioned in the Constitution? No. In the Declaration of Independence, not in the Constitution. We're going to talk about that just for a minute. Now, because we're supposed to be a nation under God, and God we trust. But they're suing to get in God we trust. They've sued for many years to get in God we trust off the money. There are lawsuits trying to get in God we trust off our money. Now, if somebody really got a lot of time on their hands, if they got to come up with a lawsuit to get in God we trust off our money, that's got to be really, really sick, you know. They got a lot of time, probably more money than time, and they want to sue to get that off. And you know what's probably sad? We may not be alive. In fact, I hope I'm not alive. They'll probably eventually get it off. You know that? I'm not predicting it, but I really think somewhere down the line they probably will, because that's just how to the left everything's gone. Way to the left. Way to the left. So we're going to talk about that. Now, then we're going to talk about the environment, the political and religious environment of the first century. Now, you'll be surprised. I'm going to show you, and you're going to be shocked, that the religious and the political environment of the first century is very similar to the environment we're in today. In the first century, we had what? The Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Essenes. Here we got what? The Democrats, Republicans, and these other folks, independents and all that. And you got what? Conservative, liberals, those kind of in between. Those three things. Do you realize the Pharisees, Sadducees, the Essenes, they're almost, not exactly, but they're almost equivalent to Democrats, Republicans, and Essenes. You ever looked at that? I did. It was amazing. Those guys, so the political environment that the Jews were in, very similar to what we're in today, because the Jews were under a system of the Romans, and they didn't want to be there. They were kind of subjugated by the Romans. We're Christians, I'm talking about Christians now, not just Christians. We're in a world, what? We're in this world, and what? Not of the world. Our citizenship is where? In heaven. We're what? Strangers in here passing through. We're not a part of this world. The Jews were not a part. Well, the Romans gave them some slack, and they were able to kind of function as long as they didn't violate the Roman laws. The Jews were fine. We're fine too, right? As long as we don't what? Okay, you get the picture. But I'm going to show you that it shocked me that, you know, this is almost no different than where we are in now. So anyway, we're going to talk about that. What kind of interaction did Jesus have with it? You know, Jesus had some interaction. We're going to look at that this morning. How they tried to trick him. But he was too sharp for that. Moral laxity, multiculturalism, competing political and religious groups. That's what was in the first century. What's in us today? The same thing. Moral laxity, multiculturalism, competing political and religious groups. We're going to talk about that multiculturalism. I'm not talking about that in a positive way. It's a negative way, how it's spin. And then, what kind of reaction should we have within it? We're going to talk about that. The political and religious environment today. What kind of reaction should we have? In other words, how are we supposed to interact in this political environment today? Are we supposed to get a sign, march up down the street, and look, I'm for this. I'm for Black Lives Matter. I'm for what's this guy that, you know, Hamas. I'm for Hamas. I'm for, you know, just whatever cause. Those just what popped in my head. Are we really supposed to get involved like that? We're going to talk about that. Now, Pilate, then we're going to talk about authority. You know what all this is about for the Christian? It's about authority. Where does our authority come from? Where does it come from? Because that's the whole story in a nutshell. If we don't understand authority, then we're going to be distracted and confused and get all involved in stuff that we have no business being involved in. We're going to talk about authority. Now, Pilate, John 19, Pilate, remember the passage? Pilate thought he had all authority. Remember? He told Jesus, look, Jesus, you must don't know who you're talking to. Do you know who I am? I have the power to release you. I don't know what Jesus did, but I know what he said. He probably looked up at Pilate like this. He probably folded his arms. I'm thinking he did. Said, look, you don't have any power over me at all. The only power you have is what God gave you. Pilate probably looked at Jesus like, he must don't know. I'm the authority. You know, we give men too much authority in our lives. We think the president has some authority. Look, we don't have to worry about the president. We got to worry about who won or lost the race. God never ran for anything, and he never lost an election. Do you hear what I just said? God never ran for anything, but he never lost an election. How can I say that? Because God is in control. And I mean control. He's in control. How do I know that? He's in control because, and you don't even know this, and you think you're in control. God knows when a sparrow hits the ground. Do you know that? You ever thought about that? I've thought about that for years. God knows when a bird hits the ground. That was brought home to me. Our patio, a few years ago, we enclosed our patio with glass. It was kind of a glass enclosed patio. And one day I walked out and I saw a bird, a dead bird, right by the door. And I was trying to figure out, what? You know what happened? That bird couldn't see that there was glass there. And he was trying to swoop in, and he hit that glass, and it killed him. And you know what I thought about when I saw that? I said, God knew when that bird hit the ground. Wow. Isn't that something? The Bible says that God knows when. So do you think he knows what's in your head and my head and everybody's head? You think God doesn't know that? He knows. We're going to talk about that too. We're going to talk about that. Jesus had all power. We quote the verse all the time, Matthew 28. Power belongs to God. We're going to go over some verses there. So many verses. I had to just, oh man, there's too many of them. The Bible says no purpose of God's can be stopped. You can't stop God's purpose. You may not know it, but you can't stop it. You can't stop it. The Christian's relationship to government. We're going to talk a lot about that. That's the next part. The Christian's relationship to government. What is our relationship to government? We studied it in our Romans study, Romans 13. We talked about that a lot in our Bible study. Romans 13. We went back and forth. We went and talked a lot about that. We know that we have a relationship with government. Christians do. But does that relationship mean that we're supposed to be voting? That we can vote? Is it optional? Can we run for office? Can I run for city council? I think I can be a pretty good city councilman. Don't you think so? I could probably get y'all to vote for me. I guess. I don't know. Maybe y'all won't know about one. But you know, we're going to talk about that. That's a question that people have. Rodney could need to run for tax assessor. I think Rodney would be a good tax assessor. I think it would. In the world, but not of it. We're going to talk about that verse. My kingdom is not of this world. Remember, Jesus said that. See, they thought, Jesus said, you know, he was so right every time. Jesus said, he said, if my kingdom was of this world, let me tell you what would happen. My members would be fighting each other. Guess what they're doing? Fighting. The people who think it's of this world, they're fighting each other. Jesus was so right. Subject to the government. We're going to talk about Romans 13 a little bit. 1 Peter 2, honor those that are in authority. We got to pray. We got to pray for Trump. Got to pray for Biden. Got to pray for all these leaders around the world. We got to pray for them. We need to pray for them. Now, we'll talk about this too. Now, why did God tell us to pray for these people? What about the people in anarchist type situations, dictators, people that, they just, we got to pray for them too. Got to pray for them. You could have very easily been in a dictatorship, right? You didn't determine where you were born. You just happened to be born in the U.S. of A. That was good for you because you were born in America. But suppose you was born in Iran, had to look at the Ayatollah every day, coming out telling you what to do and what not to do. God determined that you were going to be born here to wherever, in whatever family you were born in. That's what God said, oh, okay, I'm going to do that. We don't understand how all that worked, but we know we didn't get born in a situation where we're under dictatorship. So we miles ahead. We're going to talk about that. Honor those in authority. And this morning, we're going to talk about one verse. Matthew 22:17. When they tried to trick Jesus and tell him, say, look, he said, they thought they were sharp. Let me tell you what happened. Well, let me wait. I'm getting ahead of myself. That's a great story. I love that story. And then we're going to talk about the Christians' participation in the political process. We're going to get down in the weeds, as they say. What about direct interaction within the political process? Should a Christian be patriotic? I think that's a fair question, don't you, Nick? Should a Christian be patriotic? Can you be patriotic, have a flag in front of your house, like a lot of people do? Put a flag, just put a flag out there. Let people know you're patriotic. Is that okay? Derek was in the service 20 years. He's a patriotic guy, I bet you. He got some patriotism in it. Oh, Sandra said no. Okay, well, anyway. But he served our country. Thank you for your service, brother. He served our country. So he had to have some degree of patriotism. He may not have been flag waving, but he believed in the country and protecting it. He had a very important job in the service. Should a Christian be patriotic? Participation and membership in political parties. What do they stand for? We're going to talk about the Republican Party, Democrats, Libertarian, Independents. We're going to compare those to the Pharisees, Sadducees, like I said, Essenes, to conservative, liberal, moderate. They're saying, well, Democrats got to get more moderate now. They got to get more moderate because the country is not left. They're way left. You got to get more moderate. What are they talking about? What are they talking about? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that. And you're going to see the similarities, that the more things change, the more they stay the same. What about, we're going to say, should Christians vote in elections to support the promotion of Christian values? Can you vote for a person that say, I'm a Christian and I'm going to support Christian values when I get in office? Somebody told Mary that those politicians, they go to Washington to get rich. All of them get rich when they go up there. They go up there poor, they come back rich. That's true. You know what I believe? I believe there are a lot of people who have good intentions. They want to go and make the country better and make people's lives better. I believe there are a lot of people who go to Washington like that. But when they get up there, they see how corrupt it is. And they either have to get in line or they won't get reelected. Because these people get elected by these PACs and millions of dollars to get elected. They don't have millions of dollars to get elected. And so these PACs, they buy the people because you got to stay in office. You got to do it. You got to vote the way these people say, or you're not going to get any money from them to get reelected. It's simple. It's money. It's money, y'all. It's money. But I do believe a lot of people go up there with the right attitude. They want to try to change it. But they see it's so corrupt. Both sides, Republicans, Independents. I'm talking about both sides. It's all corrupt. There are books have been written on that. I'm not just up here spewing some opinion. There have been books written on it, scores of them, on how corrupt the government is. Anyway, we're going to talk about that. Shouldn't Christians vote in elections to support okay, I'm saying, do political parties control the outcome of elections? That's a big one. Do political parties control the outcome of an election? Do you realize there are a lot of people who believe that's true? We got to get you out to vote. Come on, got to get you out. Come on, need your vote, need your vote, need your vote. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm going to show that to you. I'm going to show that to you. Several scriptures. Doesn't matter. Do political parties control the outcome of election? No. Do PACs, big money, media coverage, determine the outcome? We're going to talk about that. All right. Last part of it. Is God in control or not? Is God in control or not? Do we really believe that a man, a political party, money, who God already told us is the root of all kinds of evil, do we really believe that man, PACs, people, political parties control the outcome of an election? Do we really believe that? Some of us do. Not one vote. But I'm going to show that to you. And you make your own decision. I'm telling you right now, though. But it's up to you. I'm going to love you anyway. But I'm going to show this to you. Because that's my job. Is God waiting to see who wins an election before he does anything? Do you think God was waiting to see what Pharaoh was in charge before he could get the Israelites out? Do you think I better wait until they get somebody else in? Do you really think God cared who was sitting in the Pharaoh seat? Just that one story alone should be enough to convince us God was in control of Pharaoh. He was in control of Nebuchadnezzar. Remember, Nebuchadnezzar wouldn't give God the glory and say, look at this big city I built. Look at Babylon. What did God do? Struck him down. He started crawling on the ground like an animal. Just those two verses should be enough to show us it doesn't matter who's in the seat. Nebuchadnezzar, God told him, say, look, you're gonna stay crawling around like a dog until you know that it's me that put people in place, that I give kingdoms to men. You know what Nebuchadnezzar did when he got back up? Gave God the glory. Kind of a drastic way to get his attention, but he got it. We're going to talk about that. Has God ever lost an election? Has God given any biblical truth about elections and their outcome? Absolutely. Look at all those verses. I just picked a few of them. Has God given us any guidance as to how we should view an election or somebody getting in power? Yes, he has. He has. Takeaways. What is the bottom line? Would Jesus and the apostles be comfortable conscientiously participating in the political system we're in today? Do you think Jesus would be comfortable looking at we're just talking about the United States, but just the world, but we're focusing on just where we are. You think he'd be comfortable seeing people be called names and out of their name and embarrassing people and just, talking about President Biden? Well, maybe he was. Maybe his cognition wasn't what it should have been. But it shouldn't be something to joke about. It shouldn't be something that you just frivolously, these news people just kind of talk about the man. He's an 80-something-year-old man. He's president of the United States, for God's sake. He's president. Even if a crow was president, we need to give the crow respect for the office he was in. Yes, he was stumbling around. Maybe they made jokes out of it, ran it over and over. Disrespect. It was at such a low level. It's unbelievable. And these are the people running the country. These are the people passing laws for you and me. These are the people. Who do we trust with our lives, future, and destiny? Who do we trust? I close it out with these, just a series of questions that you can answer any way. Who do we trust with our lives, our future, and our destiny? Who do we trust? Are we willing to concede that God, rather than man, is in control of this universe? Are we willing to concede that at every level that God is in control? We say it frivolously. It rolls off our lips. God is in control. God's in control. We don't believe that. We don't believe that. We say it. I've heard so many people say that. I just kind of look at them crazy. They don't believe that. It's the right thing to say, but they don't. You just look at how they live. They don't believe it. Are we willing to? God knows when a bird falls. I mentioned that. He knows the hairs on our head. He knows the number. He knows the stars by name. I didn't know the stars had a name. Did you? You know how many stars in the sky? You ever looked up in the sky? Billions. There are billions. Probably more than that. The Bible says God knows the stars by name. That blows my mind. I can't process that. God predicted Cyrus would help rebuild Jerusalem almost 200 years before he was born. By name. God could have said, oh, there's going to be a king come up that's going to help Jerusalem. And that would have been fine. We would have been great with that. God said, no, I'm going to tell you his name. God predicted Josiah by name that he was going to be the one to tear down all those altars and all those idol items of worship. God called Josiah by name 300 years before he was born. Anyway, God never ran for office, but he's never lost an election. He's not going to use one. Well, let's look at this verse here. Let's go look at one verse this morning. All of us are involved in this statement that they asked Jesus that day. All of us involved with it. Although the question he was asked was a fair question, I'm at Matthew 22, Ryan. Matthew 22, I think I'm at verse 17. Yeah, okay, you're there. Let me give a little background. I don't have to read it all. Let me tell you what happened. It's interesting what happened, how this came about. The Herodians and the Pharisees, we're familiar with those names. They were enemies. They didn't like each other. But guess what your enemies will do? The Herodians and the Pharisees, they're the ones that came up with this question to Jesus. Now, the Herodians and Pharisees were bitter enemies. But guess what enemies would do? If you got somebody, if your enemy's got a common person that both of y'all don't like, your enemies become what? Friends. And that's what happened here. The Herodians and the Pharisees, they became friends because they all didn't like Jesus. So even though they hated each other, they hated Jesus more. So they said, okay, we're gonna fix this guy. Now what had happened, he had already embarrassed them with a bunch of parables that he had given to them about how they were living in Judgment Day, and they wasn't living right. So this question comes after Jesus had just embarrassed in front of all these people. That's kind of a depiction of it. So they say, okay, we're going to fix this guy. So in verse 17, they come up to him and they say, tell us then, what do you think? What do you think? Well, let me back up a minute. Because what they did, first of all, they flattered him. You know, flattery. You know, first of all, what they say, I don't know if it's in this account or maybe Luke, but what they did, first of all, and that's what you do when you want to tell people something bad, or if you want to get on people about something, you want to flatter them at first. Oh, that's a great dress you got on. Oh, I really like your hairdo today, Linda. Oh, this, oh, that. So what are they doing? They're trying to let Jesus get his guard down because they're going to go in for the jugular. They flattered him. They said, oh, teacher, we know that you are a teacher come from God, and we know that you want to do everything right, and we know that's who you are. So they threw the flattery deal at him, first of all. Now, then they started in what they wanted. Tell us then, what do you think? Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? See, they thought they had him. Why did they think they had him? Because they said, well, if he says yes, then if he says yes, he's going to offend the multitude, all these people around, because they didn't want to pay taxes to the Romans. They didn't like the Romans. If he said no, then guess what they were going to do? They were going to tell Pilate. Pilate, this guy says that it's not, Jews ain't supposed to pay taxes to Caesar. So you got to do something because he's going against Caesar. So they thought they had Jesus in a crack. They thought they had him in a crack. Yes, the crowd, the multitude was going to stone him. No, Pilate was going to tell the Romans, and then he was. So what did Jesus do? It's almost like he didn't even miss a beat, as we say. There are 3 accounts of this in the Bible, 3 accounts. I'll just give you a story. Jesus said, I'll just read it. He said, but Jesus, aware of their malice, said, why you put me to the test, you hypocrites? Jesus wasn't always politically correct, was he? He wasn't. He didn't care about that. He called them hypocrites to the face. He said, why are you testing me, hypocrites? Show me the coin for the tax. And they brought him a coin. That's what this picture's showing here. He brought him a coin. And he said, all right, now, see, he's making them condemn themselves by having them answer the questions that's going to condemn their own self. Right? He says, whose picture's on this? Well, it said Caesar's. Then he said to them, therefore render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. Think about that for a moment. Let that set in. He really didn't answer their question, did he? He didn't give them a direct answer. He let them, he said, okay, basically he was saying, okay, you go figure out what I just told you. You go figure this out. I'm giving you an answer. Go figure it out. What did he mean by that statement? The key to that, understanding that, is determining what is Caesar's and what is God's. Now, if they can figure out what is Caesar, which he just told them what Caesar's was, and what is God, then they knew the answer to that question. Well, the key to that is this word here. Well, let's see. Render. The key to this is the word render. The word render there in the Greek, it comes from a root word. It has a kind of a broad, several definitions, but in context, this one means to give back, to owe something. So what Jesus was saying to them, he said, look, you give Caesar what's owed to him. It's legitimate for you to pay taxes to Caesar, is what he's saying. That's legitimate. That's legal. you should. God has approved that. So you need to go pay taxes to Caesar because that's a divinely appointed thing for you to do. But you also owe God the same. Now, if they didn't know what they owed God, and if we don't know what we owe God, then we're going to get confused and we may start giving Caesar some allegiance and some praise that should go to God. But Jesus acknowledged the fact that you can do both and not offend God. You can pay your taxes, or you can actually be involved with the government, like we're going to talk about in Romans 13. You can do that and not offend God, and you can also be faithful to God. That's where the tension is. That's where the tension is. Where's that line? Where's that line that I'm serving the government more than God, or I'm serving God more than the government? Where's that line? That's what we're going to talk about. But Jesus told them, yes, you should pay taxes to the government or to Caesar or to the world or to the government. That's what he's talking about there. Yes, you should. It was proper. But God, you got to give to God what's due to him. Your obedience, your life, your faithfulness, your love, all that are things that God is required for us to give to him. So Jesus said, as long as you can give God the things that are required, that he requires of us, it's okay. It's okay for you to pay taxes. That's fine. But don't forget, you owe God some things too. That's what he's saying. Yes, brothers and sisters, politics is important. And they were trying to trip Jesus up with that statement, but he didn't. He wasn't fooled by it. So what we're going to do, Lord willing, over the next few weeks, we're going to take some deep dives, like Nick always says, into this stuff and try to come out on the right side of the Bible. Notice I didn't say the right side of history. The right side of the Bible. Because you start looking at history, you'll end up on the wrong track. So, lesson is yours. I hope something was said. I know I didn't say much about the lesson.